Good evening and welcome to another edition of Down to the Wire. I'm your host, derbiologist, and joining me again this week is Capping with Candace. Candace, let's take a look back last week and start with the Wither Stakes. Give me some of your thoughts on that race.
The Withers turned out to be pretty much how you expected. It was a bit of a match race between Samrat and Uncle Si, who were both the speed of the field and the class of the field. They had a really great duel throughout the race, and with Samrat kind of tipping Uncle Si at the end. And if anything, I think they showed me that they're both a little bit better than I thought they are. But again, it's always kind of tough to take form when it's just a match race like that. I think maybe the safest thing to say is that you don't want anyone else who ran in that race behind them. I think they're all donezo. And, Samrat and Uncle Sarah just wants to keep an eye on it. It's pretty soft up in New York, especially with concerns about Noble Boone. We don't know exactly how he'll end up with his, I think he's had some injury concerns. So, those are two horses to keep an eye on up there.
I thought it was an impressive match race between those two, and not a lot of times when you have two big favorites like that do they actually really go at it from start to finish. So as a horse racing fan, I enjoyed the race. I only had a few dollars on Samrat to win, but I was impressed with both horses. I'm not going to get concerned about the New York bred breeding. I think with the slots money there now and the last few years, the Saratoga sale, there's some specifically nice horses being bred in New York, and I think they're going to quickly move up in the next couple of years, pretty much right behind Kentucky, Florida, California, and possibly New York as a source of the quality thoroughbreds. Samrat, I was intrigued. I mean, one of the things, he actually did come from off the pace. Uncle Si went to the lead at the rail, and I think the speed figure came back possibly a little bit low. Whenever a horse duels like that from beginning to end, it's natural for both of them to come home a little on the slow side. And I just like the way he pounced on the turn. I am a little concerned that the trainer right away the next day said, oh, he's tired. But again, sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, anybody who works out as an athlete knows that when you really put in a grueling effort, you are going to get a little bit tired. And I think really the key is how he bounces out of it. And they've already said they're going to skip the Gotham. And they're either going to, I like the fact that they're keeping their options open. Louisiana has a long stretch, or Florida Derby if they want to try to go take advantage of a possible speed bias, or go back for the Wood, but they are going to pass on the Gotham. Meanwhile, Uncle Si is going to go to the Gotham. So I think both horses fit, and I agree with you 100%. Everything else from the race, I think we'll see them in stakes races. I think they're more Grade 2 and Grade 3 horses. How about your thoughts on the Sam F. Davis? An interesting race at Tampa Bay. The projected pace was projected one way, and then the actual pace turned out another.
Yeah, I think you would have thought Harpoon would have been on the lead, being that he was on the rail, and he tends to want to be up there up front. Didn't turn out to be the case. He rated, which was nice to see from him. He did that in his maiden win as well. So that was nice to see. But as I kind of said last week, I was a little concerned about him on the rail, and there was definitely times on the backstretch where he looked uncomfortable when he was surrounded by horses. It almost looked like he kind of wanted to get out to the outside and be like, hey, when can I get over there? That's where I like to be on the clear. And once he did get clear, he kind of exploded, but he had to fan out 6 wide. It was too late by then, and he just made it too difficult on himself, even if it was obvious that physically he was the most talented horse in the field. Vince Ramos, of course, won, but I couldn't really have him. Once he got out on the lead, he just kind of stalled a bit. He didn't impress me much. I think Harpoon impressed me the most, but kind of got in his own way there.
I thought the winner, Vince Ramos, visually did not look good coming down the stretch. He looked finished on the turn, and he may have re-rallied late when those horses got near him, which is always a positive sign because it shows a little bit of competitiveness. But I just think that when he actually starts facing faster horses in longer distance races, that his speed is just not going to be up to par. But I do think he's got a little bit of competitiveness. I think it's showing that Pioneer of the Nile can develop some distance horses, and I think he really kind of is going to be he's going to be one of those Empire Maker sons that, with Empire Maker going over seas. And I think Pioneer of the Nile is definitely one to watch, and he could definitely help some of the stamina influence. Harpoon, I think you nailed it on the head. I mean, last week you kind of were worried that he looked like a horse that needed to be on the outside, and he did kind of show some of the other habit tendencies to maybe be a little aloof, and took him a while to get involved late. I've heard a couple of things. He's either going to go to the Tampa Bay Derby or he might go to the Gotham. So a couple of opportunities for his next race. They've already said Vince Ramos is going to come back for the Tampa Bay Derby. Anything else out of the race or that strikes you as something to watch in the future from those horses?
I don't think so. I mean, it wasn't the most impressive race from really anybody. So, no, there isn't really anything else I'd take from it.
This week we go to the Robert B. Lewis Stakes at Santa Anita. I think we've both been anticipating the entries all week. There was a few horses pointing for this race, and give me some of your thoughts. Kind of start with a couple of horses.
We have Midnight Hawk, who he of course won the Sham in that duel with Christo. But I remember after that race we both kind of preferred Crystal to Midnight Hawk. He really needed the lead, and coming down the stretch, he just looked tired. I don't think he's going to want to go. That was a mile. I'm not sure he's going to want to go any further than that, which he'll have to do here. And like I've said before, I'm just never in favor of a horse who absolutely needs the lead, and he's one of them. And for him, he's drawn next to Diamond Bachelor, who's another horse who I expect to be up and near the front. He ran the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and for some reason, they had him in the back there, I guess maybe anticipating the quick pace, and he didn't do anything. So I expect him to be back up front here. Don't worry about the surface switch. Everything I've seen about him working on the dirt has been great. So I wouldn't be concerned about him going on the dirt again. I think a lot of people want to write him off as a turf horse. I'm not necessarily sure that that's entirely true. I just think that they had him running against his preferred running style, and it didn't work out. But having both Midnight Hawk and Diamond Bachelor drawn next to each other, that's a bit concerning for me as far as the chances of having a hot pace, because they're both horses who kind of want to be out in the front. We also have Chichu, who's another one who wants to be out in the front. So this is one I can really see getting quick early on, and for that reason, I think, I kind of lean towards like Candy Boy and Cool Samurai, some of the horses who are going to be a little bit off the pace, especially Cool Samurai. I think he can pick up the pieces. He's one I've said on here, I don't really love him, and he's not my favorite horse in California, for sure, but I just almost think this pace is going to set up perfectly for him here. And if there's anything to be said about him, when he broke his maiden, he came home really fast, much faster than Midnight Hawk and Crystal did, in a race of the same distance at the same track. So, it's worth noting, you can't ignore things like that. And if it gets hot up front and the pace collapses, he's definitely the one I think to look for, and he'll be a pretty nice price.
The beauty of horse racing is 8 days ago you were making fun of my Cool Samurai, and now you're talking about him in positive lights, and I think that's good, because I think sometimes people overreact to any one race. And if me and you were handicapping the Breeders' Cup Classic, we're not talking about potential, but when we're actually talking on the road to Kentucky and the Triple Crown, we're actually trying to handicap what they've done to what we think they're going to do. And so that is one of the reasons why I did like Cool Samurai a couple of weeks back, and I kind of anticipated a pace like this. A couple of my thoughts. Midnight Hawk, I agree with you. My main concern with him is he's going to be overbet. So again, as we look at and make selections, handicapping and betting are two different things. Midnight Hawk in his last race was pounded inexplicably down to 2-5, and a lot of that has to do with his connections. Mike Tice, the former head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, and the hockey player coach. So all of their well-heeled friends will be betting from betting parlors all over the country on his horse, and Bob Baffert's going to also bring some money on there. The come-home time was pretty slow. I like Diamond Bachelor. That's another horse that I liked last year. A couple of notes that some people may not realize. He won his first 2 races easily. Then in his 3rd race, he got involved in a speed duel. And sometimes going into the race or as you watch the race and you just literally go, uh-oh, that horse is purposely trying to make that horse lose. And in that race on October 6th at Santa Anita, some other speedball went out there and just their only goal of the race was to make sure Diamond Bachelor lost at 2-5 that day. That is all they wanted to do. And he ran second. The horse that dueled with him ran dead last. I can't explain the Breeders' Cup, but I just think the pace was fast, and they were going to try to change his running style that day. He does have fast workouts. My one concern is War Fronts. I'm not convinced he's going to be a dirt sire yet. His two best dirt horses were sold at, and he developed early. He won the Fountain of Youth, which is in February of his 3-year-old year, and then never regained that form. Secondly, his other horse, the Factor, developed early. He won a stakes race at Oaklawn and then never regained that form. What I've seen is Diamond Bachelor and the War Fronts tend to land very hard on their fronts, and that's kind of they'll be good for a few races, but I don't imagine long careers on the dirt for them. So those are a couple of my thoughts. What about a couple of actually a surprise here? Home Run Derby, the Kitten horse kind of came in here. That was interesting.
Yeah, before that, because you're talking about war fronts, bear in mind in the Breeders' Cup Classic Declaration of War, who ran huge that day on the dirt, he's also by Warfront. But yeah, the Kitten, I was surprised by that. I mean, a lot of these horses, you know, we kind of had a feel for some of them, might be coming, might not, and that definitely was the one that caught me off guard. You're not used to that, but you know, having Kitten's Joy, you think, you know, I'm not worried about distance or anything like that, but you know, just maybe a little outclassed here. I don't think that's not a horse that I'm looking at that really has any chance of winning. Maybe it might be the only one that I'm tossing, to be honest.
For me, the pace of the race is really going to decide the winner. I kind of struggled when I was writing to make my selection. I ended up going with Candy Boy as my top pick, and basically what I'm envisioning is either two scenarios. Shitu goes to the lead, and he's a son of Henny Hughes who looks like a sprinter, walks like a sprinter, and talks like a sprinter. And that's that Stormcat coming out, big rear end, big fork in the muscles on the rear end. And for those of you who say, well, what does a sprinter look like? Just if you want to see a classic Stormcat sprinter build, it all the way goes back to a horse trained by Dwayne Lucas many years ago, Terlenga, who was the mother of Stormcat, and Lucas with that quarter horse influence just all the way down the generations, and Henny Hughes, they stamp them. They look good in as 2-year-olds because they fetch a lot of money, $300,000 for this horse. So I see Shitu either giving the lead and setting fast fractions, or dueling with Diamond Bachelor, because I think Diamond Bachelor's got some speed too. Either way, it doesn't look good from a pace standpoint. So I think Candy Boy gets first run, and the horse with the most talent down the road is Cool Samurai. 3 7-furlong workouts. He's worked out more in the last month than Havana, Honor Code, and Shared Belief in the last 2 months combined. So trust me, I'm a big believer in John Sheriff's. He likes to point and shoot for races. He may not win on Saturday, but come San Felipe and Santa Anita Derby time, this horse is going to be well meant, and that's when his closing and those workouts are going to pay off. So I'm picking Candy Boy. I think he gets first jump. Cool Samurai is my second selection. And kind of who did you end up picking and kind of why?
I ended up going with Cool Samurai for a lot of the same reasons you said. I mean, like I said before, he wasn't a horse that I was super impressed with in his last race. That was a race with the Admiral, who was up on the lead, and he kind of barely got past him at the end, but he closed really well there very quickly, and I just think when the pace collapses here, which I'm expecting, like some of the same horses you said, like G2, Diamond Bachelor, even Midnight Hawk, I really think Midnight Hawk is a horse who absolutely needs the lead. It seems like there's such a chance of getting a speed duel up front that I have to go with an off-pace horse, and I think Cool Samurai is the one that you're looking for in that situation.
Our bankroll plays this week as we take a look. Last week I had $5 to win on Samurai, so my bankroll for the year is $29 on the positive side. I'm going with $5 exactas, Candy Boy over Cool Samurai and Diamond Bachelor, and then coming back with $5 exactas, Cool Samurai over Candy Boy and Diamond Bachelor. Basically, I'm hoping for a pace collapse and trying to hit a nice exacta price. I think that cool Samurai Diamond Bachelor might pay $60. Candace, your bankroll play?
I'm going to have 5 to win, 10 to place on Cool Samurai. I think he's going to be flying late. It's just a matter of if he gets there.
Great, and your bankroll sits at a -11 on the year. Now, this week, another big development is the Derby Futures. Talked about a lot. Kind of talk to me about some of your strategies. And first off, will you play some futures? And what are some angles that you like to play?
I will be playing. I have when I play the futures, I kind of look for one horse that I think is going to offer me value, and I think for me a big strategy is to go for horses who are going to be running soon. So between this future and then the next opening window, I want to go for horses who will be running in that time, because if it's a horse who I think has talent and is going to run well, then you're anticipating their odds coming down in the next pool. So for me, I've been eyeing Bobby's Kitten for a while. I know when we've been off the air, he's one we've been talking about a lot, and I just love the way that the route they're taking with him. He's one of the few horses who I feel really confident that he's going to be, like, that if he's sound, he's going to be in the Derby. Just because the route they're going with him, they're going to put him on the turf. That'll be in February, so that's what I mean by I want a horse that's going to run between now and the next pool, which will be at the end of February. So he'll run before then, and you better believe, even though that's not a points race, you better believe if he runs off the charts there, which he's done every time he's run on the turf thus far, that he's going to come down and he's going to get noticed. And then they're ultimately pointing to the bluegrass for him, and that's a 100-point race. So if he just gets in the money, I mean, third might be a little iffy, but for the most part, if he gets in the money, he's probably in. So he's the one I'm really looking for. I'll make a win play on him. So that's kind of my plan.
My strategy is to kind of similar. I always think the value really is in Pool 3, which used to be Pool 2, because you're about 30 days closer, and yet the odds don't really change that much sometimes. A couple of plays I like here. I like Bobby's Kitten over the field for the exacta. I think that could pay $100, which is getting 50 to 1. My angle is kind of the same thing. Is one, I know Ramsey will run any horse that's got the points to run in the Derby. Two, he would love it if it's a kitten. That's even more power to him. And they basically said their strategy the day after the Breeders' Cup. They said, we're going to rest him up. We're going to start working him out in February, and then we're going to run in the Palm Beach, and then we're going to go to the Bluegrass. And so far, he started working out. He's going to go to the Palm Beach, and then the plan is the Bluegrass. And he's got the class. The only question is can he go to the dirt? He's already proven his class. His Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Juvenile 109 fractions on the turf. That puts him in with anybody's level, and he's already won a couple of other stakes races. Another angle I like is Tonalist. There's about 7 horses that have one lifetime win in this Pool 2 futures, and I think he's going to be the longest odds of them. And so I think Tonalist over the field could be about a $120, $130 exacta. And I think the field is still a strong play. If you just had to bet one win bet, I would still go with the field. So those are my 2 plays. Possibility is Tapiture. He is a son of Tapit, and he did have 4 races as a juvenile, but he does have a couple of excuses for his losses, and he's really been working out nice, and I think he's kind of off the radar because he hasn't been racing. So that might be another one I might play, Tapiture over the field. Again, just trying to get a 50 or 60 to 1 return, and then I usually dive in deeper in the second pool. So my win bet would be on the field. My exactas will be Bobby's Kitten, Tonalist, and Tapiture over the field. And that's what I plan on doing with the futures. I do believe Honor Code, and I expect Top Billing to be favored here. He's got a fan club, and the general people seem to really gravitate towards Curlins these days. Any thoughts on who might be favored, or somebody you're not going to play for a particular reason?
I'm stunned that you're going to play True Tapit. But yeah, I mean, for me, like Top Billing, he looked really nice, but those odds are just way too low for him. I would never be on that. And like you said, I completely agree. I think he'll be favored. Shared Belief, Honor Code, Havana, any of the horses who aren't working, I wouldn't go near that by any means. And even some of these horses, I mean, even like an Intense Holiday, who's 50 to 1, like he's a horse who he strikes me as a horse who's just going to take people's money. Like when you really look at him, what is
Tell
he
me how
really?
you really feel.
Well, when you look at him, what has he really done? Like what has he really done? I think he's one of these horses who kind of plays with your emotions. Every time you watch him, you think, wow, if he's almost there, if he just improves a little bit more, and he just kind of never does. So a horse like that, might be one who, when you look at the price, it looks nice, but he's kind of exposed at this point. Look, he's ran 6 times. We know what he's about. So, maybe that's another way to look at it too. Is some of the horses who haven't run as much, they have a little more room for improvement versus a horse who's already ran 6, 7 times, and we've kind of seen what they're all about.
That's my cutoff point for races and improvement is 4 races. You'll notice many horses improve in their 3rd and 4th lifetime start. So I agree with you. Intense Holiday, he's already got 6 races. I don't see a lot of improvement. I think come Saturday, the Derby Future Pools close right before the Lewis. Mm-hmm. And I think after Midnight Hawk's race, a lot of people may be wishing that they didn't play him, but we will see. A lot of times, I don't want to, you can't judge too quickly because, a lot of times half the battle is getting there, and that's what people really are playing futures for is, even if, some people might play him in some exactas, and if he's at least in the starting gate, at least they have a live ticket, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I will be diving in a little bit. Talk to me. I know a lot of excitement this Sunday, the return of Will Take Charge as an older horse. Any other races you'll be looking forward to this weekend?
Well, I'll definitely be watching Will Take Charge in the Dawn. I actually kind of prefer River 7 in there. Will Take Charge, of course, is the highway, but it'll be a fun one to watch regardless. I'm sure they'll both run well. And Game on Dude is also back this weekend, so that's another one to keep an eye on, of course. So it's kind of fun seeing some of these older horses coming back now and getting some runs under the belt this year.
Should be an excellent weekend of racing. I'm going to be playing a couple of futures, and I'll also be, I think the Lewis could end up being a nice betting opportunity, so I will be playing some nice exactas in there, trying to maybe key even some pick 3s with a couple of 3rd and 4th choices. So next week we have the El Camino Real and the Southwest Stakes, a Saturday-Monday affair. And then 2 weeks from now, hard to believe, we're already at the Fountain of Youth and the Risen Star and kind of the start of the 50-point season. That's going to do it for another edition of Down to the Wire. Thanks again, Candace, for joining us tonight. A lot of great thoughts and kind of some Derby future talk. And then next week we'll talk about the El Camino Real and the Southwest. Make sure to follow along on our blogs, Capping with Candace, and also on Twitter, Derbyologist and Candace Hare. So join us next week for another edition of Down to the Wire.